everyone, I thought I would bring you along with me today as I go through my gouache and I sort through my collection and I put it into a palette. I have a few reasons I want to do this. Firstly, I have quite a few tubes that I've had for a really long time and they're beginning to dry out on me. And I want to try to salvage any paint that I have left before they get so dry that I can't even squeeze them out. The other reason is because I really want a travel palette for my gouache. I use it a lot in my mixed media as my base layer a lot of times. I don't typically solely use gouache on its own. And so for that reason, I don't necessarily need it to be super thick and like opaque all the time. If I do need that, I can certainly use some in the tube, but the vast majority of my specifically sketchbook work, I like using it as a foundational medium. I like that it gives this almost mattified, chalky feel that I noticed a lot of my other mediums work over really well, like my colored pencils and my neo colors, and just it gives it almost like a grip. So I really enjoy it. I like how quickly I can lay down washes of color with it, similar to watercolor, but it does have more of that opacity to it. I also bought this tube crank ringer. You put your paint through it, or you could put anything, honestly, that's in tube form through it and crank it, and it'll help squeeze it out. I have like a little tube right here that I tried it out on. It kind of crinkle cuts it. That's what it reminds me of. And yeah, I got this because I've wanted one for a while because I have quite a few tubes that need to be like really pushed through, but also for this project, I wanted to be able to get as much of my gouache as I can, just because gouache, at least the tubes I have, they're not super cheap, and I do want to salvage what I have. I got this empty palette on Amazon along with these, I guess they're half pans that also came with it. I also decided to get some stickies to put on the bottom. They work exceptionally well to the point where if I want to move things around, it's going to be tricky, but I did know that going in. My rationale behind using those is that one of the downfalls with putting gouache in a pan is that gouache, when it dries, it's crumblier than watercolor. And I don't know if it's because there's less binder or some of the agents in it create that, but it's kind of the pitfalls of panning gouache. So I was thinking if I get these little sticky things at the bottom, the less that the gouache moves around in the palette, if I'm transporting it or moving it around, the less it will crumble. Does that make sense to anybody? Because it seems to make sense to me. I also decided, I watched a few videos on how to maybe prevent some crumbling, and some people said that they add blending medium to their gouache. I tried to be careful with how much I add because I don't want to dilute the gouache too much, but I've noticed people saying that it can just help give it a creamier texture. So that is the experiment I'm going to go with, and let's hope it works. I'll show you what they look like when they're dry. I'm going to speed this part up, and you guys can just sit back and watch. So gouache, for anyone who may not know, is kind of the in-between of watercolor and acrylic. It is more opaque than watercolor, but it is, so in a sense it's more like acrylic, but it is reactivated with water like watercolor. There is something called acrylic gouache, which is not reactivated with water, and gouache and acrylic gouache lie between watercolor and acrylic in my mind. Acrylic gouache cannot be reactivated, gouache can. They also have a more chalky, mattified texture and look when they dry compared to watercolor and acrylic. And yeah, they're magical. They are great, and they have their place in my mixed media. So right now I'm just trying to decide what order I want to put my paints in. I have a couple big white tubes. I'm also going to throw in a couple of the half pans just because I use so much of the white. I typically like to sort my paints by like the rainbow. Basically, I do the Roy G. Biv. I've noticed a lot of watercolor sets when I buy them, they start with yellow and they work towards red, and then, you know, they kind of all do their own thing, but I just like to go like the rainbow. I don't know, it makes sense in my mind. It's how my flow works when I'm working. And so I'm starting with the darkest reds, and then I'll go through to the orange and the yellow and all my greens and all that. And then my last strip of half pans is what I usually like to put my earthy tones in. So my ochres and umbers and things like that. I like to separate my earth tones a lot of times from the brighter colors. But there are some unique in-betweens I've noticed. Like I have a Venetian red that is a more natural red, and sometimes I don't know where to put those. I chose to just put them with my other colors instead of my natural colors, my other brights. So this is one of the colors I think it's Flame Red. It's almost completely dried up. It is so hard to get out. It's like thicker than tomato paste. I'm just really struggling, and I have to like guide it in because it is so just dried up. Luckily, it's not crumbly yet. I don't know if that even happens in the tube. I'm sure it does. But if you see, it's just like sticking to my little mixer, and I had to add extra blending medium to these ones. I have a few that do this that you'll see. I sped all this up because obviously if I didn't, it would be like an 1.5 hour video, and that is so unnecessary. So yeah, I kind of have to really manipulate it, and it's not the prettiest, but that's okay. Now I'm moving on to my earth tones. I'm not quite sure what I was doing there with the sketchbook, testing out a color. I believe I had this is because I had 2 raw umbers. One was Holbein, one was Winsor Newton. I was contemplating only putting one in the palette, but when I swatched them, they are surprisingly different, like very different. So I decided to keep both of them. I put the gray and the black next to the purple. I don't know why. Who knows? But this last row is my earth tones. I will be leaving a list of all of the gouache I use in the description box below, in case anyone's interested. Also, the palette I bought and the tube bringer. Quite a bit of time has passed, you can tell by the lighting. I had my neighbor come over. She brought me some potato salad, and we had kids running around, and I have to take breaks a lot when I'm creating because mom life, but that's, you know, part of the summer. And I'm just finishing this up and getting it cleaned up a little bit. Then I'm going to let all these dry, and I laid all the tubes out that I used just so I can go back to one of my sketchbooks and swatch and name all of them so I don't get them confused. Okay, this is what it looked like when it was completely dry. I had used it. I'm going to play a clip of me using it. Some of them are still a little bit wet. Not terrible cracking. The ones that were dried out before I put them in look more, lumpy and crumbly. That's just the nature of it. But to the touch, they feel a lot less dry and crumbly than previous times I have let my gouache sit out and dry. So yeah, one of them has like a hole boring through it. I don't know what I was doing with my brush there, but I'm happy with them. I'm going to see over time how dry they get. I'm hoping the blending medium really did its job and keeps them from getting too dry. Here's a video of me using the palette for a sketchbook session. I am following along on Katie Moody's Patreon. She's doing water life this month, which is a really exciting topic, by the way. And I'm following along on the replay of a sketch session. So I'm using the gouache as a foundation for color. And then as you can see, I have a ton of my materials out. I've got my Neocolors, I've got some Inktense pencils, I've got my Derwent drawing pencils, because I want to use this, as I said, for the base and then go on top with my other mediums to add the detail. Katie is another YouTuber, and her work is super inspiring to me and just fantastic. I love her Patreon. I love the work she makes, and I'm a big fan. So here is just, a little bit of the process of, I wish I would have started it before I even started painting the fish, but I didn't think ahead very well. I end up using the gouache a lot more than I thought I would. I was just really enjoying the way it was laid out and the process of it, how it was similar to a watercolor palette. Normally I just have the tubes, and so I have to think about the colors of gouache I want to use ahead of time, and that isn't really intuitive to me. Sometimes I just want all my supplies out and I just go along with it. I should plan out colors more often, and that is a goal I want to work on. But when I'm in the middle of sketching and it's a timed sketch, I like this palette layout where I can just go in quickly, and it was just making it really efficient, and I'm really glad I put them in a palette. Besides just trying to salvage the drying gouaches, I like having this with me. I'm really glad I did this. Now I'm going in with my Inktense pencils. I like, because they're water soluble, just dipping them right into the water and using them at their most intense color, and then maybe I'll smudge them out with my finger or whatever, but they add such a pop of color, and I've been neglecting them since I got them, honestly, because I wasn't quite sure how I wanted to use them. I'd use them a couple times, but this method of layering down the gouache and then going in with more intense details from these Inktense, I really liked it. So I'm glad I got them out. I wasn't sure I was going to use them at all, but I ended up using them quite a bit, and I feel like they were a very useful medium in this specific sketching session. Please excuse my cat as she investigates every single thing I'm doing on my desk all the time. I try my best to keep her down, but cats, they don't care. And I have cat hair on my sketchbooks. I have cat hair in my paints. I try my best, but oh my goodness, it always gets everywhere. So you will see cat hair in my videos. This is just a forewarning. There was one in my last video even. Now I'm just adding the final touches with my Neocolors. If you don't know, the ones I'm using, Neocolor 2s, are water-soluble wax pastel. They're fancy crayons is really what they are. Water-soluble crayons, and I love them so much. And they're fantastic. I love the texture and the opacity they give. My whole, I don't know, I just remember the era of getting these a couple years ago, just being feeling like my artistic world expanded tenfold. I really love them. Now I'm just labeling everything, and we're finishing up our sketch session. And thank you so much for watching. Thank you for going along with this process. I'm curious if you've done this before, if you've used gouache, how you use it. If you do have a travel palette, how you like to travel with it. If you have any tips and tricks, I would love to hear them. I am by no means an expert, and I'm constantly learning about how to use my supplies and how to store them and travel with them. So if you like this video and you like my content, please consider subscribing. Thank you guys so much for watching, and until next time, I'll see you guys later. Bye!